This week on the Frame Savers, Pepsi Man. It had to be Pepsi Man. There's no other option.
Okay, so this is the part where we insert cool sound effects and,
Yeah.
and music,
This is
but
where
you
our
miss
intro
out
music
on it.
goes.
You miss out by catching it live. Go get the post production version if you want to hear the good
Post
stuff.
production with mastering and editing. Okay, I'm gonna lead this off because Chad here is awkward whenever he
In,
leads it off. So
insufferably awkward.
yeah. So this is a special episode of the Frame Savers. We are doing a micro podcast because we just got back from SGDQ and we figured we could do a recap of all of the fun events that happened there, the cool runs we saw, everything like that. But before we get to that, Chad, how are you doing today?
I've been doing pretty good. This is going to be like the world's longest micropod, I think. Like we're going to call it a
Yeah,
micropod, and it can totally end up being full length. So I like
it
it.
could. I feel like generally that's what happens is we say, "Hey, let's do something short on this game," and then we talk for way too long. So that's what podcasts are about. Have you been playing anything in
Uh,
particular lately?
I've been trying to focus on Super Mario World a lot lately. I'm still in the All Castles tournament despite all of my best efforts to get knocked out. And so I feel like I have to put up a good showing since the top eight's coming up soon. I think
Ooh,
we're trying to organize to have some like massive hype mega stream of the top eight. Like it's going to be some sort of one day, all day endeavor. And we're going to try to convince Twitch that it's not so degenerate that they should put it on the front page. So it's gonna
oh, that
be
would be great.
it's gonna be pretty dope.
Gonna get some professional announcers and stuff come over from League of Legends to
Yeah,
commentate for
yeah.
you
We've
guys.
already
Nice.
been in talks with Dacid Bro to see if he'll come and bring his
Okay.
high quality commentary to us.
Awesome. Well, I have just been doing a couple different things. I had been doing obviously a lot of runs for SGDQ because I had two runs in there, Barbie, Game Girl, and Little Mermaid. And then I also I've been doing Link to the Past attempts. I have a big list of games I really want to get back to, such as Episode 3, Darling, Alien Syndrome, which I need to finally wrap a bow on, and some Game Boy games I want to revisit. So trying to get a plan together of all this stuff on a learn and then start learning new stuff for AGDQ already. So already looking ahead. But yeah, we have some events in the speedrunning community coming up, I believe. Do you want to kind of point some of those out?
So for those of you who are listening to this live, it may be a little late for you if you're catching the recorded version, but currently the Australian speedrunning marathon is going on right now. I don't have the link on hand, but we've tweeted it out. I think it's just twitch.tv/Australian Speedrun Marathon. And they are doing they have a quick break in their stream, I think tonight, and then tomorrow they're starting back up again. So if you're listening to this live, check them out. We also have registration just opened for the SRL Mystery Tournament, and I cannot recommend enough getting involved with this tournament. It's a ton of fun. It's a tournament where the people who in it actually provide the games for it. And when you go to play your match in the tournament, it's double elimination, and you will get a random draw from the massive pool of games. So you never know what you're going to get. Often it's something that's either hilarious and weird, or it's a game. It's always a game you've never played. So they'll make sure of that. So it's a ton of
I,
fun.
I believe our a resident RGL streamer Toad was in the finals last year. Is that correct?
That might be, actually. I think last tournament was won by N4H.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
a great runner. There's always the same name showing up at the top. There's a lot of people who believe it or not, blind racing is truly a skill that can be, you can actually cultivate a skill in just being good at racing a game blind. And the fact that you see the same name showing up over and over kind of proves that.
For sure. I think also the 12-hour challenge is coming up again soon. Is that correct?
Correct. The theme this time is handhelds. So
Ooh, yes.
it's not required that you participate, or it's not required that you fit the theme, but the theme this time is playing a game on a handheld. So that can range anywhere from our beloved Game Boy to newer consoles if you feel so led. I mean, things like the PSP and the 3DS and things like that. There's a ton of really great consoles to choose from and a ton of really great games. So
Virtual Boy.
do you count that as
Oh, it's a handheld. It's a handheld.
do you have to plug it into a
That's
wall, or
for
does it
on
have
the go.
batteries?
I'm sure you can make some. I don't know.
I mean, because by if just being able to hold it in your hand makes it a handheld, I can hold my
I guess it's
cess
more
while
of
I
a
play.
a face held, really, because it's tacked onto your face. Oh, that's nice.
Sorry.
So yeah, and so also the other retro event ish kind of going on, not really an event, but I'm sure everybody in chat is aware of Pokemon Go. I know it's all over the news and everything like that. Just wanted to bring that up because we brought up some other relevant retro news last episode, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit.
A
Just
true speed run if I've ever seen one.
yeah, it's just nice to get out and like walk around and have random people like look at you and maybe like talk to you instead of everybody pretending they hate every stranger in the world. So it's been a lot of fun. I think there's apparently more active users than Twitter, which is insane.
They just
Um,
overtook Tinder and they're about to overtake Twitter for number of mobile installs.
People would literally rather find Pokemon than love. That is what
I just saw a
it's proved.
video about an hour before this podcast of a Vaporeon appeared in Central Park, and cars were literally stopped in the street because people jumped. I kid you not. People literally just jumped out of their cars on the road, like left them running on the road, and ran into Central Park to go catch this Vaporeon. It was hundreds, if not thousands, of people running into Central Park. It was amazing.
So welcome to the end of times. Yeah, so we're going to do a quick SGDQ recap and talk about some of our favorite runs. Before we just take a quick break for some music, I just wanted to point out that we are recording this live, we didn't say, on Retro Gaming Live TV, where you should definitely go give them a follow. This is a 24-hour retro stream on Twitch. They do all kinds of different retro games, from speedruns to casual plays to all kinds of stuff, really. Randomizer. So give them a follow. It's twitch.tv/retro gaming live TV. They're super awesome. Follow them on Twitter. So we'll take a quick break and then we're going to hop into some of our favorite runs of SGDQ. So here you'd hear some really sweet music, probably like, yeah,
And then right
like
as
stuff
it's
like that.
starting to ramp up, you would have a fade out into our voices, which is probably the best part.
You want to lead this one off, baby girl?
Sure. So as mentioned, we're going to be discussing some of our favorite runs from SGDQ 2016. Now, it's important to know that we've only been back from SGDQ for about a week, and during our time there, we really didn't get an opportunity to see everything that was going on. I'd say that this is probably one of the GDQs that I did spend the most amount of time in the stream room, though. There was a ton of really cool runs, a lot of people that I wanted to support and see the stuff that they were showing.
Yeah, as
And
soon as I got home, I made a long watch later list on YouTube of like probably, I don't know, 48 hours worth of runs that I want to go back and at least watch parts of. So I've got a long catch up time to do. It's tough when you're there. I mean, obviously it's 24/7, so you physically could not see all the runs that you want to watch probably. And then with commitments like doing commentary, doing your own runs, wanting to hang out and meet people, it's just kind of impossible. But these are some of the runs that we both saw, or one of us saw, that we really enjoyed, that we think you should definitely go back, follow those runners, check out the YouTube VODs, stuff like that.
yeah, so let's just get started with a few of these ones that we really enjoyed. I think that any list that includes some of the highlights of SGQ 2016, I think every list that you find is probably going to include Pepsi Man. So that's probably
Whew.
the one to start with.
I also want to be clear, we're not talking about the runs I did, which were clearly the two best runs of the entire event, just because it just seems too biased, but I think we all know those were the best, most impressive speed runs of the whole week.
Right.
Would you agree? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fairly obvious. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Pepsi Man run?
Okay, so Pepsi Man is an awesome game. I actually had seen this run at Californiathon, which is an event we had kind of pointed out a couple months ago. So I was already fully aware of this game, and I think the experience was a little lost if you were there in person because it got so hype and loud that you didn't get to hear the cutscenes. But I think it's Mike Butters. Is he was in some of the Saw movies or something?
Oh, was
Basically,
he?
in between, yeah, in between each level, there's these cutscenes, full FMV video, full motion video of this guy that I think this game only came out in Japan, ironically. So this
Hmm.
is what the Japanese developers thought Americans were like. So he's a very fat, like, well, not very fat, but he's a slobbish heavyweight guy with just Pepsi cans all around him and eating pizza and just saying crazy things that they think Americans would say. So it's very hilarious. The gameplay is also really funny. You are a Pepsi mascot of sorts, which I've never seen before, and it's basically like a temple runner where you run straight forward and you pick up Pepsi cans and avoid obstacles. But there's some pretty comical points in that. And also, in person, somebody dressed in a full Pepsi Man costume, which was our friend, which was super awesome and very bold of him. So it was a lot of fun. You definitely have to go back and watch it. It became definitely, it was actually a run that had been rejected like three GDQs in a row.
Yeah,
And so
it's a little bit of a weird speed run just because of the fact that it's more or less an auto scroller. It's on rails. You succeed at best by not getting slowed down, and obviously there's some speed tech throughout it, but it gotten turned down in the past. But I think in the end it had the last laugh because it was probably one of the most iconic runs in the marathon.
absolutely. And the donation incentive to show the FMV videos was clearly worth it. Obviously, the speedrun would skip those, but then you're losing the whole spirit of it. So Pepsi Man was awesome. Definitely go give it a watch. What else do we have here that was really awesome?
Well, do you want to pick one off the list?
Sure. I really enjoyed LADX 100%.
Yeah.
That's one of the games that I've watched the most in my whole time on Twitch, the last 3 years or so. I kind of had fallen out of the community for a bit, because it got a little complicated for me. The categories got a little confusing, but it was really fun to watch 100%. One of my favorite speedruns because if you know LADX, it's the Game Boy Color version of Link's Awakening, and they added all of these different little quirky side games, like getting your picture taken with all these different characters, which you could print on the Game Boy camera if you had some desire to do so. And you have to do a big trading game. So there's a bunch of like fun, different things that you do that reminded me of the game that I played as a kid. So Zorlak 7 has the world record in a bunch of different categories on LADX, and he did a really good job. The commentary was funny, and it's a really good run. It's got some great glitches and tricks in it, and some cute moments. I don't know. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, that's
That
probably
speed
one
run
of the strongest Game Boy titles that there are.
for sure.
And I think he did a great job. I had never met him before, and getting an opportunity to finally meet Zorlak 7 at GDQ was an awesome experience. He's a super nice guy. What game was it just recently that he took the world record in?
Gargoyle's Quest,
Gargoyle's Quest. That's right. So that
which is
was
an episode we did. That was our fifth or sixth episode. So
that's right. Yeah, we joked with Rogue Link that we were going to have to redub that episode because we only have world record holders on our show.
exactly. So why don't you pick another game? Definitely go check out that VOD though. It was really good.
I think one of the runaway hits that surprised everyone was definitely SMW Low Percent. So Super
Definitely.
Mario World, that was an incredibly strong run. Rezifos had gotten bumped to bonus game. I think he had made like almost final cuts in AGDQ, if I'm not mistaken, but it ended up
Oh,
getting
okay.
rejected at the last moment. But he really just hit it out of the park. That's a category that just it's absolutely brutal, and I don't think a lot of people understand. It's one of those games that it's one of those runs that if you haven't really done it yourself, it's hard to understand exactly how complicated that run is. And the fact that you kind of work into your estimate a whole bunch of extra time for making mistakes. And what was so astounding about it was that he really just didn't make the mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, he missed the hardest trick one time and then got it the second time. Outside of that, I mean, the shell jumps are not easy, and maybe he made them look easy, just like Panga makes them look easy in Mario Maker, but they are not easy. And SMW is already a hard enough category as is. This was probably my number one for runs at SGDQ. It was just so impressive. 15-year-old kid with nerves of steel, like not buckling under the pressure, and just also adorable that his grandmother was there on the couch, very
Absolutely.
confused as to what was going on.
Yeah, she asked a
She
few
was,
times during the run. She asked, "Is he doing well?" And the other commentators on the couch turned to her and said, "He's doing very well."
yeah, she was a smoking buddy of mine a bit at SGQ, so it was fun to see her up there supporting her grandson, having no clue what was going on,
Yeah,
and
it,
standing ovation. People were cropping his face onto the Mona Lisa and posting it on Twitter. It was just really, really awesome. And I think a lot of us were nervous because he had to raise money for him and his grandma to go out there, and then it was a $30,000 donation incentive. A lot of us were like, "Oh man, that's a lot of money. Hope it gets met." And so it just culminated in this awesome run where a very not marathon safe category that he pulled off with a lot of just composure. It was really impressive.
I think one of the coolest things about that run is when he submitted it to AGDQ. He wasn't new to the game by any means or new to the community, but a lot of us had our concerns because that's the sort of game that could absolutely go very wrong very fast. And he's pretty young, and it's a difficult category, so we were worried about what was going to happen once he got in front of people. And I think the people who really got who really learned their lesson was those of us in the SMW community who ever doubted that he would be capable of it, because he completely blew it out of the water.
The Rezifus.
Yeah.
Go
He's
follow him.
yeah, he's definitely one worth following. I mean, he pretty much only streams pretty difficult challenge runs of Super Mario World anyway, and he's extremely talented at everything he does, so he's worth following 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you give a quick discussion on Catherine? I didn't get to see this run, but it's a game that I really like.
Right. I've seen Catherine in the past, and it's a game that I don't know all that well. I've never played it myself, but as a puzzle game, it's one that's immediately easy to understand. Like, you can kind of understand what the goal of the game is, which is really fun for puzzle games. Sometimes you're kind of lost in what's going on. And so the run itself is pretty difficult. It's a difficult game. The puzzle mechanics can be extremely challenging. But what made this run worth watching was that he did a one player two controller run where he did
Oh.
co-op mode, and he played both controllers. So he had a fight stick in front of him playing one part, and he had a controller in his hand playing the other part. And it's one of those games I can't really commentate it for you because I don't understand all the puzzle mechanics themselves. And he obviously, as you might expect with something that difficult and playing two players at once, he obviously had some challenges with it. But the fact that it was even possible, and he did it what felt so effortlessly, was what made it so amazing.
Yeah, two controller one player runs are always impressive to me. I don't think I have that kind of coordination. That game is really strange. It's kind of like a dating sim in the cutscenes in between, and then a puzzle game in its actual gameplay. And essentially, you're climbing up these blocks while I think a demon, something's chasing you, or something is trying to catch you. And I think you're kind of in a dream the whole every night, and you're going through this.
Right.
Again, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a Catherine expert. I do know it's a game that people love to play against each other as a competitive puzzle game, but it's
Yeah.
definitely worth checking out. It's got a very strange kind of dark theme and a sense of humor to it, and you probably miss some of that in the speedrun because you don't get to see the cutscenes. But the actual puzzle mechanics are pretty cool, and any two one player two controller run is worth at least checking out.
Yeah, it's a fascinating game because in single player it acts as a puzzle game speedrun, but it's also been shown at Evo in the past as a competitive, almost fighting game, and it's a really fascinating game that it can play both of those parts so well. And basically be the same game. Like, it's not like two different modes. It basically is the same game where you just try to play competitively against one another. It's a puzzle game that you can lose due to time pressure or by making mistakes, and the competitive mode is basically just forcing your opponent to make mistakes or making mistakes on their behalf. So it's a fascinating run as it is, and it's worth watching just because of how amazing Ghoul is at playing it.
Yeah. Moving on to the next game, we could talk about some Super Mario Maker. I think me and Chad both at AGDQ were pretty skeptical of this being at a GDQ. I just remember neither of us being incredibly, I guess, excited about it. But when we got into the room, I remember us both being pretty shocked by how much hype there was and how fun it was to watch people race these incredibly well designed levels. And, the GDQ committee, whoever's picking the levels, does a really good job of picking creative levels that present, you know, a really significant challenge. And you have so many great runners playing up there. You have Mitch Flower Power, you've got Grand Pooh Bear, you've got Aaron Area 51, bunch of great runners. I don't want to leave any out, but
Yeah, used
they end up
pizza.
pulling it off. News Pizza, I Ate
Chronic
Your
Sauce,
Pie.
Chronic Sauce, who totally took it away.
Yeah,
He completely uh, held his team down, which was amazing. Um, so the thing was that the AGDQ showing of Super Mario Maker was really amazing, and it was amazing that they were able to organize it in such a way that it proved everyone wrong about it being worth being shown at a GDQ. But it had a few flaws, and I really want to say that the group of people who pitched the Mario Maker idea and kind of refined it for this next GDQ, I think they did an amazing job of actually fixing
absolutely.
all of the problems that they had last time. And I think the biggest complaint that people had was that last year the races themselves were ton of fun to watch. But as soon as one team got ahead, it was really no longer a race. It was just watching one team completely blow the other team out of the water, because you only want to watch, once one team reaches a new stage, you want to watch that new stage, right? You don't want to watch an old stage that's already been beaten. And
Yeah,
so,
that was the problem is they couldn't do commentary on, both stages, obviously. That's just not possible. So one team would get two stages ahead, and now you're kind of ignoring the team in the back, and you're not going to see anything exciting to happen for them. So this year they did individual races of each level, and then once that level was over, they moved to the next one and they kind of added up the score. And I think they were supposed to pick one of them as the winning level, but I don't know if they actually did. I don't think anybody really cared about who won, quote unquote, but it was cool to see how each runner reacted to the level. And my favorite level personally was designed by Panga, who I think is always brilliant. I think it's the one that the video is showing now.
right.
But essentially, there's a Yoshi running on the top of the level, and you keep having to follow along with him and trigger certain things for him to unlock stuff for you to get through the level. Just incredibly ingenious design in that level, and I really liked that.
Yeah, there were a ton of really cool levels. I think more or less all but maybe one or two levels. Everyone was really thrilled by how well produced it was. I think you could go on and on about this race. I think there were so many naysayers, and there still are a ton of naysayers in the community about Super Mario Maker. And I'll admit that I don't find it to be very much of a speedrun in general. But the team that puts it on, that has been putting it on for the GDQs, the group of people, Carl Sagan, Golden, Panga, Jakku, all of these guys who have been helping to organize it, have done an amazing job of basically doing exactly the opposite of what everyone expected.
Grand Pooh Bear in chat making a good point that the Mario Maker race sucked, and those guys are scrubs. He was in
That's
the race, just so you know. So
that's accurate.
accurate. So, what game do you want to talk about next? I'm gonna give one to you since you've seen a couple of these I didn't.
Okay.
What
Let's
about Two
talk.
Worlds?
Oh man.
I wanted to hear about this because you
Okay.
said it's a very short run, but it was really funny.
Okay. So Two Worlds, and I'm almost scared to put it on screen because it'll be done by the time we're done talking about it. But I think that that's probably the perfect way to show this off. So Two Worlds is a game that's very similar to Elder Scrolls. It intentionally got put in the Elder Scrolls block because it's very clearly a rudimentary game that was meant to cash in on the Elder Scrolls series. Sorry for upsetting anyone by that
Shots
description
fired.
of it. But what's really interesting about it, and I'm just going to go ahead and spoil the run for anyone who hasn't seen it because you're basically going to watch it by the time we're done talking. The idea is that the entire game is leading up
Oh,
to
I
you.
saw this run
Yeah,
now. I
yeah, yeah.
remember now.
Yeah, so
Okay,
the
go ahead.
entire run leads up to you trying to defeat the big bad guy. That's how this run is set up. Is how the game is set up for you leveling up, and you got to get strong enough to beat the big bad guy. The critical mistake that they made with this game is that about 2 minutes into the run, you actually encounter the bad guy. You meet him, and you can talk to him and stuff. The thing is that like any other Elder Scrolls game, if you just punch a random NPC, they're going to want to attack you back. And so this entire speedrun is centered about finding the bad guy in 2 minutes, hitting him once, and convincing him to deal splash damage to you that hurts some villagers, and the entire town gangs up on him at once. And there's 20 of them wailing on the big bad guy, and as soon as he dies, wouldn't you know it, the game, in its infinite wisdom and programming, decides that that's it. You won. You beat the big bad guy, so it's over.
Yeah, it's amazing. You basically just piss off all the villagers, and they just all swarm to him like ants on some picnics or something, and just like go at it. It's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, this run's really interesting. I'm fast forwarding in it because I think for how short this run is, it almost does a service to just show it here. because so right here he's just attacked the bad guy, and the bad guy is racing over to him, and the bad guy deals splash damage that hurts the villagers, and so now you're going to see him running back, and all of the villagers are swarming the bad guy now, and
Yeah, I saw this live. It was
the
pretty
whole run's going to
hilarious.
be over in the next 40 seconds or so. So
Nice.
here's the entire town ganging up on the big bad guy. For some reason, all of these no class villagers are capable of killing the most powerful creature in the world, I can only imagine.
Power in numbers, man. Power in numbers.
That's true. There is a strength in numbers. And
So
as soon as he dies, the game's over.
So while you watch the end of this mob violence, why don't we start talking about Gimmick? Because that's one of my favorite speedruns. I really like watching Gimmick, and we definitely should do a episode on that down the road. I'm sure we will. We've discussed it, but there's a bunch of different categories for this. Really, just what is it? Good ending and bad ending, and then
Right.
no warps. Good ending and bad ending. This was good ending, no warps, I think, something like that, or no out of bounds. I don't know the exact words, but Gimmick is a really high tech speed run. If you haven't seen it, you've got to check it out. Essentially, you're this adorable creature. It's Sunsoft. It's got amazing music. It's got adorable graphics, and you throw this star to attack enemies, but you can also ride this star. And so there's a lot of speedrun tech with using this star to travel about the levels quickly. The caveat for good ending is you have to go collect all these different items throughout the whole level, and you get to actually see the final boss and stuff like that. So it's a really good run. Aquas ran it, and there's some very, very legitimate speedrunners who have run this game. Cypher was kind of the gimmick guy for a while, and he was there at the event and on the couch. And then also,
Becker
um,
Ed.
you know, yeah, and Bikured Aquis, our boy Narsh, runs it and is really good. Who's a listener of the podcast, so just a lot. It's got a very storied history of really good speedruns, and it's got a lot of cool tricks. It's definitely worth checking out. It's a very expensive cart, so if you have a power pack or something, download it and try it out. I
This is
actually have never
probably
beaten this game or played it yet, so
This is
I've only
probably,
watched it.
I would say, one of the purest speed games. It's pure technical skill. There's, to my knowledge, no randomness in it. Please
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, there's no RNG anywhere in this game, and it's just all pure skill, pure manipulation of the mechanics in the game. And I think for that, it's a game that everyone should at least play at some point. And if you've never seen a speed run of it, do yourself a favor and go check it out. It's incredible.
Yeah, something they didn't really talk about much, I think, during the GDQ is that, I mean, even all of the drops you get are manipulated. So you'll notice a lot of movement that just seems nonsensical, like jumping on different enemies, killing some enemies, not others. But basically everything is tech, like you said. Everything is intentional in that run. And it is absurdly hard for a 10 to 15-minute game to optimize because the movement is so just technical. So definitely worth checking out and go to the leaderboard, follow all those guys. They're all
Yeah,
great.
outside the scope of what we're talking about right now, I'd say if you're looking for a cool speed game, Gimmick is just one of those ones that's totally worth checking out. But it's one of those games that'll beat you up before it lets you play it fast.
Yeah, it intimidates me, so I'll probably never run it. But I'm a little pansy.
All right, so
Um,
let's talk for a moment about the opener of this GDQ.
Woo,
So we
bouncy
had
boy.
a personal friend of mine, Bouncy Boy, Rain
Oh, of
Sunshine.
yours, just yours. He's
Yeah,
not my
not
friend
you.
anymore.
I don't.
Okay. Okay,
I don't think he knows
that's
who you
fair.
are.
No, he would never.
No, Bouncy Boy is a great guy, world record holder in this game, in any percent and a few other categories. An insanely talented runner of Sunshine, and he just completely blew it out of the park. If I recall correctly, he managed to get sub 120 in any percent in the
Yeah,
marathon.
his run was a little rocky for him at the start, like the first 20 minutes, but then he really got it together and pulled together a really good run. And also just his reaction to, there's a lot of hype around opening in a GDQ. There's a lot of eyes on you. Everybody's in the room, and the run didn't start off particularly great, and he did a great job of making that entertaining and playing it off, and then composing himself to get a really good run together. So that game is very high tech as well. Just a lot of a lot of movement tech in that game. It is not easy to optimize, and he's the best, really. I mean, his times are really good. Obviously, the world record holder in any percent, and some other categories, and definitely somebody you should follow if you like. If you grew up with Super Mario Sunshine, you'll be pretty blown away by the speed run and all of the different tricks and glitches and movement tech the game has.
I think this is one Mario game that goes somewhat underappreciated, and I think the speedrun does a lot to amend that. So if you've never seen the speedrun, I recommend going and checking out the SGDQ run. I recommend going and checking out Bouncy Boy. There's a ton of great runners that are worth checking out for this game, and it's got a great community, a lot like Super Mario World. It's all around. It was all around a great way to start SGDQ off on the right foot.
Well, no community is better than Super Mario World. Let's be
It's a
honest.
tough. It's a tough line to cross.
I mean, you're in Super Mario World community, so
Yeah, I'm not
kind of a tough
biased.
one.
I'm not biased.
So one thing that I would wanted to check out that I missed, and I'm wondering how it went, was the Tropical Freeze Race. This is a Wii U game, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and it looks like a ton of fun. I think most of the tech goes behind you being Cranky Kong, the old Donkey Kong guy, the grandpa, and he uses this his cane like a pogo stick. It's basically DuckTales 3D, I think. So
That's
I'd
a
like to hear how that race went.
that's an
It's a
interesting.
pretty cool game.
Yeah, I didn't catch it live. I actually watched a big chunk of it at home, and I plan to finish watching it. It was an awesome race. I think what made this one so special was that first the way they organized it was really interesting. So the community for Tropical Freeze is very tight knit, but they're sort of all over the place, and so they organized a race between Team USA and Team Canada. They had runners from both USA and Canada, and I think what made this special is first the race was really close. I think it was just a ton of fun to watch. It was exciting at all points in it. But what really took it over the level was the high quality commentary. The
Well,
commentary.
Spike Vegeta's involved in that, right?
Uh,
He was in that race.
yes, he was.
He's
Um,
hilarious. So
the thing is that I think if you're looking for the race that had or if you're looking for the game in the marathon that had the best commentary, I'm not going to say that this one was number one because I haven't seen everything, and I don't think that that's a fair statement to make because it's somewhat subjective. But I think that this one had such amazing commentary that it's at least worth checking out, without a doubt.
again, you would have to be taking all of the commentary me and you did for different runs out of contention, right?
Right,
Because
right.
that's
Yeah,
just
that's
not.
you can't match our high quality commentary, but
Yeah,
for a
we are
game,
professional
if
podcasters.
they had
I mean,
asked me to commentate this game, I mean, I would have considered it. But short of that, I think that they did a great job.
yeah, they did a great job. So, speaking of commentary, I also heard the Jack and Daxter run had a lot of funny commentary to be involved in a run that I guess did not go as planned.
Yeah, I included this on the list. I haven't watched this whole run. I sat in the stream room for about 15 minutes of it. This is sort of an honorable mention for me. I don't think that it goes on the list of best speed runs because at least what I heard, because I didn't see the whole run, but at least what I heard was that the speed run was sort of all over the place just because it's a fairly difficult game and it didn't go exactly to plan. But what it lacked necessarily in being the most proficient run at the marathon, I think it made up for in being one of the most entertaining runs. It had Bonesaw obviously was doing the run, but it also had Patty on the couch, and I'm trying to remember who else was on the couch for this one. I don't recall offhand. Darkman was on the couch. I'm not sure
Yeah, I
who
was
else.
still up, and a bunch of people came up to me and said, "Did you see the Jack and Daxter run?" And I was like, "No." I mean, it's not a game I know anything about or would have marked on my list of games to watch because it's a little too many dimensions for me personally. But yeah, they were like, "Oh, it was so funny, it was hilarious." They're like, "The run didn't go well, and they made it really funny because of that or something." So I was like, "Oh, that sounds really cool." I put it on my list to check out because I've met Bonesaw before. He's a really nice guy, really friendly. So I definitely want to check that
I
one out.
believe I entered the marathon room. The portion I was there for was when they were trying to convince the streamers to stop firing shots at Owen Wilson. Um,
Perfect.
because apparently they had spent a little too long commentating their opinions on Owen Wilson. So
That's
I
amazing.
guess that out of context comment should kind of convince you that the run is perhaps worth checking out for the entertainment value.
Yeah. So let's take a quick break. You can listen to some music unless you're watching us live, and then we will talk about the rest of the runs we enjoyed and talk about some of our favorite memories, experiences at GDQ. That cool with you, baby?
Hey, babe, anything's
I
cool
don't
with
want
me.
it's running on. Hey, quarantine, what up?
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree with you. You were smart to break it up.
I'm a smart guy. I do
Hey,
things
I think
sometimes.
I think you do great.
I can read at a seventh grade level. Thank you very much.
You want to lead this one off with your next favorite?
Sure. Sure. Yep. So as we wrap up our list of runs that we really enjoyed at SGDQ, and again, this list is not exhaustive, and it also is not in order of what we think was best or worst. Just some stuff that we enjoyed that we wanted to highlight. The Tetris Grandmaster thing. I'm not a big Tetris guy, to be fair. I didn't ever play Tetris until Game Boy Quest like 2 months ago, but the Tetris Grandmaster competition is always super amazing, and watching the four of them with their like custom arcade sticks, like just going insane on Tetris is always, I mean, pretty mind blowing. I think the part that always makes me most impressed is the part where it's invisible, and yet they still keep playing while the credits roll and all of the blocks are invisible and they know where they are mentally. I don't understand it. I can't even comprehend it. So it's always really impressive to watch
Yeah,
any
the
of the
skill of
Tetris
these guys
Grandmasters.
is it's beyond description. I think it's one of those things where if someone told you that Tetris was going to be at a GDQ, you'd be like, yeah, okay. But just seeing it is what you need to kind of understand what's going on. It definitely falls more in the category. People have been using the term super plays. We've been having a lot more super plays at the GDQs lately. Things like Tetris the Grandmaster was at the previous SGDQ. At AGDQ, there was Step Mania from an incredibly skilled runner. And then we
Yeah,
had Tetris the Grandmaster again this year. They said that it was going to be the last year that they're planning to submit it. They were happy with the feedback that they got, but I think that they just don't want to run it into the ground. But
sure.
it's so amazing to watch them. They put on a great show. There's modes that just go faster than normal people can think. There's modes where they do doubles, which is two Tetris players playing on the same board,
That's crazy.
which requires a ton of coordination and communication. They have runs. They have runs where it's just a all clear mode to like level 99. They have or to 999 lines, and then they have just these different modes where the game gets harder in weirder ways throughout it, and then they finally ended off with a exhibition of a puzzle mode in one of the versions that the guy played completely blindfolded, which
Oh,
was
that's insane.
yeah, it was
Um,
really impressive to watch. It's one of those runs that it doesn't really bear us uh, describing every little piece of it, but it's just you have to go watch it.
Yeah. You're not going to understand everything going on just like I don't. Like, I don't know all of the strats. I don't really understand how they're doing what they're doing, but it's pretty amazing. I know, I can't remember her name. She
Enchantress
was
of
next.
Numbers.
Yes, Enchantress of Numbers. Shout outs to her. She's really cool. She was next to me in the practice room with her arcade stick, which like sounded like it was made of like titanium steel. Like I was like, this thing is no joke. Like it's not moving and just doing crazy stuff. And I'm like playing a game next door, and I'm like, yeah, I felt a little inadequate at my gaming skills
I think the
being
most
near the Tetris
impressive thing about
Grandmasters.
I think the most impressive thing about her was they mentioned that she picked up the game from having seen it at the previous SGDQ. So she was off of 1 year of
Whoa.
learning.
I did not hear that. That's just
Now,
insane.
now most of the other guys had, by their own admission, been playing for 10 years by now.
Yeah.
So her skill level may not have been quite what theirs was, but it's amazing that she was able
For
to
one
keep up
year.
with them off of
I
one
didn't know
year.
that because she was not that. I think she finished fourth in one of the races I watched, but she was not that far off of them. To
No,
to know that is pretty mind blowing,
yeah, she was
actually.
like tens of lines off of them when the third place person cleared. So
Yeah, as a quick caveat, I think we talked about this maybe a bit after AGDQ. I know there are definitely people that are kind of against these super plays or whatever, because they're not pure speed runs, and I think so I thought maybe we could speak to that for a second. But the Stepmania one at AGDQ was one that I loved, and for me personally, I understand how you wouldn't want it taken over by a bunch of people playing Rock Band or something. But I think in moderation that it's really cool to see these people that are just, they put more time into Tetris than I have into speed runs that get into the tournament. It's not like they're any less, worthy of being in the GDQ. But I think it does. Some people are a little wary of it, and I think they should open their hearts and minds to it because I think it's awesome.
I think the argument that I've heard the most that I agree with is that super plays really are trying to feature the same thing that we try to feature, in that it's just trying to feature
Exactly.
being exceptional at your game. And while their measurement of exceptionality may not be necessarily how fast you go, obviously there's a huge element of speed to Tetris. While their focus may not always be on speed, it still focuses on skill. And I think that it has a home in the GDQs. The staff has been really great at responding to the concerns about super plays and asking, what sort of percentage are you guys comfortable with? Like, what percentage do you think is
Sure.
reasonable for us taking up? And most people I've found respond, even if it's up to 10%. I mean, we haven't hit that mark by any measure.
No.
I mean, this year, 1.5 hour maybe was the Tetris Grandmaster exhibition, and then another hour and a half was the task block. And I think that
Yeah.
that takes up such a small percentage of the overall show. And I think what it does is it brings to the table so much.
Sure. It's tough to find something, as impressive as running Barbie Game Girl, but if you're gonna look for it, stuff like Tetris Grandmasters, at least a stab at it, I think. So yeah, go check that out. What about Skyrim? You probably watched more of this than I did because I am not into this kind of game, really.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have watched the Elder Scrolls anthology block.
I watched a little of it.
I probably wouldn't
And
have, except for I had a ton of friends who I was there supporting, who were featuring their games. I was there supporting my friend Albino Albatross running Morrowind, and Dr. T Chops running Skyrim. And I've watched a lot of Skyrim speedruns. I haven't watched a lot of speedruns of the other games, but they're really fascinating in the way that they completely subvert the intentions of the game.
sure. Was half coordinated in that block as well?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
His run was Momodora, which was a separate game.
3D like fantasy world. I don't know the difference between any of them. So
Sure. Yeah, the arena run I think is one that a lot of people don't particularly care for, because the any percent run is basically trick the game into thinking that the dungeon that you're beating is making progress through the game, and so you beat basically the same dungeon like 17 times. Um, so that's maybe a little less interesting, but like the Morrowind speed run, you basically started out like 5 minutes into the run, jumping, several hundred feet across the map to like end game territory, and and then fighting bosses massively underleveled. In Skyrim, you advance the progress of the story by walking through walls and talking to NPCs that you shouldn't have access to, and tricking the game into thinking that you're much later in the main quest line. You know,
it's
these
awesome
games.
to see that you could beat a game that's literally intended to have what 150, 200 hours of gameplay easily and beating it in like an hour, hour and a half because of glitches. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I don't think that any of the Elder Scrolls games are much longer than 30 minutes. I don't think there's any of them that
Speedruns yet.
the speedruns go much over 30 minutes, and I think that that's absolutely fascinating. It was almost not it was almost just some of the Elder Scrolls games, but at the very last minute, they did a donation incentive for the Oblivion or the Oblivion game, and that made it the full anthology. It had all 5 Elder Scrolls games, followed by Two Worlds, which is a faux Elder Scrolls game. So we had the whole anthology there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. The one thing I wanted to see that I missed because I was still traveling back were the next two Taskbot or Task Block and the Super Metroid runs. Do you want to talk about those? Because I've yet to see them, unfortunately, because I was on a plane.
So the task block was really interesting. They did a glitched and non-glitched runs of the game VVVVVVV, however many V's I said. It's six
Lots of
V's. The
Vs.
answer is 6 V's.
It's pronounced V.
And those were pretty interesting. The highlight of task block for me, unfortunately, I'm not going to say a lot of words to everything else because it paled in comparison, but the highlight of task block for me was the 4 games, 1 input tasks. So they had Super Mario Brothers 1, Super Mario Brothers 2 US, Lost Levels, which is Super Mario Brothers 2 J, played on a Famicom Disk System, and Super Mario Brothers 3. They had them all hooked up to the same task input controller, feeding it in real time, and it played one input file that completed all 4 games. And actually, the most interesting part of it is there was very little cheapness to be able to finish the game. It's not like, one game just refused to enter a level until it was the safe time to do so. They all pretty much played the game simultaneously and ended, I think, pretty much at exactly the same time, if you account for load time. So like the last one to complete was SMB2J, because the Famicom Disk System does a really long load time right after 4.4 or 5.4, wherever the load time is.
So my coworker was talking about this actually, who had watched it. Were the load times disparate? Like the inputs were still through those or not?
So the way
How
it
did that
worked
work?
was the task controller knows when the game is loading, and it pauses during those load times. So the input file was the same, but what you're seeing isn't necessarily the same input in real time.
Okay.
It's feeding the same inputs in, but like for instance, when SMB2J did its very long load time, its input file paused for a moment to wait for
I
the load to
gotcha.
finish. So no less impressive, but that's kind of how that one worked out.
Okay. And then, so I definitely want to check that out. I heard about that. And then the big hype race of Super Metroid, that's the big game that's in every GDQ. The Kill the Animals, Save the Animals donation incentive is always the biggest. How did that go? And I'm assuming Kill the Animals won?
Kill the Animals did win. This
Hugely disappointing to me. I like Save the Animals because I'm a troll.
I'm sorry about that, man.
No
So,
problem.
so the thing is that I really only watched this game because I didn't have anything going on at the time. I don't know the Super Metroid speedrun very well, and I've actually never played the game casually, which is something I still intend to do, and I'd still actually like to learn the speedrun one day. But I've never really watched the speedrun all that much, but I decided to sit in on it. I was like, I want to get a good seat for Super Mario RPG coming up afterwards. I want to just chill out for the evening and watch a good run. So I decided to sit in for the Super Metroid race, which is very uncharacteristic for me. And I am so glad that I did. Every year when this game is featured at GDQ, there's always one runner who gets knocked out. Because for the speedrun, you don't stop for any of the save points. And so when you die, you die. You're done. Your run is just over.
Yeah.
And so every year, there's always one runner who gets knocked out. So this year, one runner did get knocked out, and everyone was like, okay, that's completely normal. The commentators played it off like it was no big deal, and that was fine. And then shortly after that, another runner got knocked out, which is no big deal. You kind of expect it with a game that's this difficult, being played at this skill level. They're already going low level or a low health at all times. But what was the big upset was that right toward the beginning, it was only Behemoth and Zeus left. And Zeus went into the Mother Brain fight and died.
Oh, wow.
Right in the Mother Brain fight. And so everyone in the audience, it was the confusion and the anxiousness was like palpable in that room.
Yeah.
Because everyone was kind of whispering to each other, like, what do you do? What happens if everyone dies? I mean, there's a donation incentive that ends up making up, over $250,000
Yeah.
of the
And
total amount
they weren't at
raised.
that point yet. Yeah.
Yeah,
So if they all die before it, what happens? That's crazy.
I mean,
don't
we
even
had that
know.
question answered because apparently, everyone's got to know. So the answer is that if everyone dies, they all have a save file that they load from to play the end of the game together.
Okay. I
and so
was thinking,
that's
I was hoping that would be the backup plan.
right. So that was the resolution. Sorry, it was Oats and Goats that died on Mother Brain. My mistake.
Okay.
But Behemoth, who is sort of the new guy to the group. I don't know the history of all of them. I don't know all of their skill levels, but it was made aware to me via the commentary that Behemoth was sort of the underdog. He was the guy who learned the game most recently. He had the however you want to say it, weakest time on the leaderboard. He was the last guy left, and he pulled it off. He finished the
Nice.
run. And ended up, winning the race. I guess you can call it by default, but I don't think there's a single person alive who would not give him the credit he deserved for finishing the race under such, there was so much anxiety at that point,
Sure.
if he dies, then the entire race has to like finish by default. So you know that he was up there sweating bullets fighting Mother Brain. You know, you have to finish the fight with more than 300 health left because you have to, you know, survive the rainbow beam. Um, and he,
Plus, like the whole world, he had to save the whole world or something, right?
exactly. I mean, if he
I don't
dies,
know the plot of Super Metroid clearly, but
it's something about
something
some
probably is at
animals.
stake.
I think there's
Something's at stake.
I think it's just all about saving or killing those animals. I think that's
It's all
what's
about
really
animal crackers, I think,
right,
actually.
something like that. But
So
it
definitely a
was
race worth checking
super
out.
super entertaining. I don't even really know Super Metroid all that well, and I cannot recommend that run enough.
Yeah.
So
Last run is SMRPG. Our boy Lack Attack technically closed out the event, and the Super Mario 64 race was a bonus event. But we've definitely discussed we would love to have Lack on the podcast and talk about this game. He keeps giving me crap about it. He will be on. I need to make time to play this game actually casually more than I have, but he did a great job. I think he got some pretty poor RNG throughout, but he pulled out a really good run, and it was really cool having him, Millennium, Cypher, just all those people doing commentary. Caleb Hart was there, and just a really good run. I think it's honestly an underappreciated speed run, even though I think it is pretty well beloved. It's still it's cool to have a game that's an RPG and that has, you know, pure execution elements to it as well. I watch, a lot of FF7 and some other speedruns, but it still has those. It's not platforming essentially. Well, I guess there is
there's
platforming in it,
platforming
moving
in it.
around enemies and stuff like that. Also, the
There's
super jump
platforming in
execution.
Bowser's Castle as well. There's like actual platforming.
Yeah. So it's like a really cool combination of like two different genres of game, and kind of a good everybody's beginner RPG to introduce people in RPGs. Hey, I've always played Mario. I never played Final Fantasy. Let me try this. I remember playing it as a kid, kind of under that context. And it's a cool game, and Lack did a really good job just closing out the marathon. And then I really liked the 70-star race after that as well. It was really close all the way down to the end. And obviously, Mario 64 is one of the most technical and intense speed runs out there, along with Super Metroid and some of those other kind of top tier speed runs. But it was a really good race and really close down the stretch. So I liked that a lot as well.
Yeah, Lack's exact words when asked about how he felt about the race were, he got max skip first try, he got 100 jumps on Johnny, and he got the D. And
Yeah,
that's all he wanted. If he got those things, he was happy, and he got all of those things. I think in the end, he pulled out a great run. I think
yeah,
that there was
for
so
sure.
much that could have gone wrong. This game is a massive troll. There's so many points in the run where if things go a certain way, it's just over anyway. And
Yeah, and he needed he didn't get a lot of freebies at the points that he wanted them, and a couple other things, but I think on the part of his execution, it was a really good run. I don't think he really messed up much in the
and he
run,
raised a
which
ton
is
of money for
awesome.
charity by getting sub 2 in the minecart section. You know,
Oh yeah, that's true. And I Ate Your Pie sang a song, and there was just
there was
a
things
lot of
going.
things going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really, honestly, I really enjoyed this GDQ. I'll probably say that after every GDQ because I love GDQs. But there's a lot of people that are salty about GDQs. I notice as they get announced, their run didn't get in. They don't like GDQs because they think all the same games are picked. I hear all these arguments all the time on Twitch. Go look through the list of games that were picked for this SGDQ. It's just not the case. There were a lot of new games put in there, a lot of interesting stuff. I think they took more risks this GDQ than they ever have before. It was better organized than it ever has been before for both runners and attendees. Like everything was just really spot on. Any complaints that I've heard people have from previous GDQs just didn't honestly seem prevalent to this one. I think that the GDQ staff did a really good job listening to people, making adjustments, all that stuff. It was really good time. So and we had a lot of fun outside of the streams. We did a couple of other things we could touch base on real quick before we go to Q&A, but. I think the most fun thing if you never attended a GDQ is hanging out in the practice room with all the different runners and just racing games, learning new games, talking to people, going up to people's rooms and having drinks, socializing, going out to dinner, obviously. But so we had me and Oth did a couple of Link to the Past races, which I guess we're gonna do one after this podcast. Those were fun.
Yep.
Blunt Bunny joined in, and some other Void, some other cool runners.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with those. I think there's a huge disparity between people's attitudes about the GDQ, between people who did attend and people who don't attend. You'll commonly see people talking about, no fun allowed at the GDQs, but that's really just not the case, and they always end up being so good. And exactly like John said, a ton of risks taken. Like Kirby's Air Ride had been rejected over and over. That's easily an honorable mention for this GDQ, a game that over and over got turned down for the marathon itself, and just ended up, I think, completely blowing everyone's expectations out of the water. We
Yeah,
also did what was it, the four
four
by
by four
four
relay.
relay, which is there's a ROM hack of Super Mario World made by Dots Are Cool that allows four player co-op instead of 2 player co-op, and it has become something of a tradition now at the GDQs that every year we try to put on what we call the 4x4, which is supposed to mean that we do 4 consoles, each playing 4 player co-op, so that's 16 players. At AGDQ, we had actually 5 consoles, so it was the 5x4. And this year we had 4 consoles, we had the 4x4. It's just a ton of fun. It's a chance for all of the SMW runners to kind of get together and hang out. We don't take the race too seriously, but it's just a ton of fun. There were other SMW races that happened at the marathon. There were some people doing some all castles, some 96 exit. There was a randomizer race of SMW.
Yeah, I actually had never participated in the 4x4. I didn't participate at AGDQ because I hadn't run the game yet. I basically might as well have never run the game because it had been so long since I played it and I was terrible. But somehow we finished second. I don't know. Auth was on this superstar team that just did not live up to, you know, what you'd think, kind of like when the Lakers got Karl Malone and Gary Payton and all those people together and then they didn't win the
Wow.
title.
All of these shots
Yeah,
fired, dude. We
dude, you had the superstar. You had the ringer team, man. You had the ringer team. You had the stars.
Yeah, but we
But
sat around
but
and
that
had
team
fun.
chemistry wasn't there. Yeah, the team chemistry wasn't. No, I'm sure there was a lot of stuff going on in the locker room. That
Okay.
yeah.
All right, man. If
No, but
that's
it's a
if
lot of
that's how
fun.
you want to do.
It's just a lot of fun just hanging out and just seeing other people do their speed runs and just I don't know. It's a lot of fun. I really recommend trying to make a GDQ if any are close to you. Don't listen to the haters. It's a lot of fun, and there's always criticisms of anything that you can say. This, oh, we could do this better, that better. It's a great event. It raised 1.3 million dollars for Doctors Without Borders, which is a very deserving charity, and it was just a lot of fun. So we'll go ahead and take a quick break unless you have other comments, and then hit up some Q&A.
No, I'm good.
Okay, pretend this is music.
I'm gonna
It's like the
request that
Cantina
that
music, right?
music gets left in. I think that's totally worth it.
Seems true. So at this point, just to give you guys a heads up, we're not starting the recording again, I guess, quote unquote. But we need to start getting some Q&A from you guys because we don't have anything prepared. We're expecting you guys to give us some awesome questions. So go ahead and start off if you want to put the questions in our chat. Is that what we did last time? Something.
So we have that. Still have that spreadsheet open.
Yep.
I'm going to copy and paste questions into it so that we make sure that
Sounds
we
good.
answer everything we can.
Sounds good.
But we're just gonna delay starting the next segment for a moment, while we give you guys an opportunity to give us a few questions to work with. So yeah, I think that it's weird. There's so many more runs that we could have talked about, but unfortunately
We didn't
time
even talk
not.
about Proto. She had 4 runs.
Oh
Just
man,
odds were we should have talked about.
I was gonna put Game Boy Block on the list as well, and I forgot to write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Game Boy,
there's a
Game Boy
lot of.
Community's gonna kill me.
Yeah, and I mentioned last minute Kirby's Air Ride, which was definitely a favorite of mine because Pear Strike's a buddy of mine, and he.
Okay, we got some in here if you want to post them in.
All right. Here we go. Let me start copying them over, and we can start our segment once I start copying a few of these. So give me a second to copy. Yeah, go ahead and at me with your questions if you want me to make sure I don't miss them. But I mean, there's no requirement for that. I'll get them. If you want to start leading off this section,
I'm gonna delete all the runs.
go for it.
There you go. Okay, so I'll go ahead and start this off, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. So as we said, we're recording this episode live on Retro Gaming Live TV. It's the second time we've done this, and we really enjoy having them host us and put up with our nonsense. So give them a follow for sure at twitch.tv/Retro Gaming Live TV if you are listening on iTunes or SoundCloud or through our website, anything like that. So we're going to answer a bunch of live Q&A. We're going to probably go for as long as we possibly can on this until the episode is obnoxiously long. So the first question we have is from cute little Oshawott, and she asked, I'm assuming she, sorry if you're not, what was the most odd run at GDQ? I would have to say Pepsi Man, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I
was
don't.
I was gonna
Well, no,
mention
what about
Pepsi Man.
Barbie Game Girl? Barbie Game Girl is pretty odd too. I think Pepsi Man's weirder though, in all honesty.
Yeah, just being directly a strange. It depends on what you mean by weird. Like, is it a game that the game itself is weird, or is it that the run is weird, or is it that the speed run itself has something strange about it? Um,
Yeah. I think it's with the absence of an awful games block this time, there weren't as many like comically strange runs as there normally are.
yeah,
Normally
they
you can
usually
kind
have
of
a silly
pinpoint that
game
awful
block.
games block.
They usually have a silly
Yeah.
game blocks at SGDQ. Not sure what happened to that this time. Maybe there was a block and we just didn't notice that it was specifically in a block. But yeah, Pepsi Man, I think that if you're willing to consider the speedrun being weird, I think that Two Worlds, I talked it
It's
up
good.
so much because I wanted people to see how strange that game is, and I think
Yeah.
I think it delivered. So that would be my
And I'm not here to talk about my own runs, but Barbie Game Girl was one of the stranger additions to the GDQ for sure.
I
That
think
game
that's
just doesn't
accurate.
make sense. Yeah. So second question is from Mungo Meat. He asks, "What was the worst new game you played at SGDQ, Author Blues?"
What is the worst new game I played at
I know
SGDQ?
you played Crash Test Dummies for a bit.
It's Crash Dummies. You have to get the lore right. It's the
Crash
incredible
Dummies.
Crash
Sorry.
Dummies. I did play that, and Terex, Dark Terex, shout outs to Dark Terex, who was willing to put up with me basically every GDQ, asking him to teach me some strange game, taught me some of the mechanics for Incredible Crash Dummies. I did spend some time with friend of the podcast and personal friend of mine, Meekins Box, where
Shout
we
outs to Megan.
sat down and kind of shared some awful games. He and I have a shared passion for awful games, having met each other in Cuso Grande, which is Brosensha's Bad Games Tournament, and then continuing to meet up in Mystery Tournament, playing more bad games like Out to Lunch and things of that nature. So shout outs to that. I introduced him to the joy of the adventures of Dr. Franken. I introduced him to Pink Goes to Hollywood, a
Oh my
huge,
gosh.
a super fun game.
That actually does look kind of fun. Dr. Franken does not look very fun,
No,
but
Dr.
okay.
Franken is not fun. That's we were specifically trying to share terrible games, and I think he did a
Yeah.
great job with that.
Unfortunately, we didn't have an event. I didn't really play anything new, but unfortunately, we did not have an Escape from Atlantis event like we did last year, which was my favorite part of SGDQ. You've probably heard about that on the podcast at some point. And we did an episode, half of an episode on it, which is really, honestly, just shows how ridiculous this podcast is. But yeah, I'm glad that somebody got some bad games in. So the next question, I guess I should probably answer because I live here, from Dorkmaster Flex. Do you think AGDQ is too close to the presidential inauguration? Will it be an issue for traveling, etc.? The event takes place in Herndon, which is like 20 miles away from DC, and I have never really encountered any issues. I've grown up this area my whole life with the inauguration affecting things too much, so I would not take that as too much of a concern. I think that I would just travel as normal. If you're too concerned about it, don't fly into Reagan. Just fly into Dulles or BWI. You'll be good.
And I
'Cause
think that
Reagan's
the
in DC.
event is sufficiently far enough away, isn't it? It's the 8th to the 14th, 8th to the 15th,
Of
and
January.
the
Yeah.
inauguration is what, the 20th, 21st.
Oh, okay. I don't know anything about politics, so
Well,
I
anyway,
live here and I just plug my ears everywhere.
I got you.
That happens.
I think that there's still a gap in time between the two events, so
I'll pick you up on my personal helicopter, worst case.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Next question is from Maction, who is RGL stud. Asks, what games were you disappointed didn't get in?
Ooh, that's a tough call. I mean, my answer is going to be
Everything you submitted.
yeah. I mean, I'm going to be biased into saying
Honestly.
games that I submitted.
I
I'm
want
trying
to
to
get
think of,
one.
so like in the past it was really easy for me because games that I was really bummed that didn't get in were always like Kirby's Air Ride. Like, why won't you let that game in? That game's amazing. And there were always like a handful of games like that were games that just needed their time to shine and didn't get it. I think SGDQ this year was actually really great about that. I think that they took a
Yeah.
lot of risks, and I just can't think offhand of a lot of games that I thought should have made it. I would have loved to have gotten some of my awful game offerings in. I know that some of them weren't as great of offerings, but I still think that the CDI Zeldas should be. The reason why they had turned it down in the past, and I totally understand it, was because they said that most of the charm of that game comes from its cutscenes, and so they didn't want to leverage a game too heavily that was really only good because of its cutscenes and not because of the speedrun tech
Pepsi Man.
itself. But Pepsi Man is now going to be my go-to comeback for that. So listen out for maybe me submitting
Don't
CDI
give up on
Zeldas
the
again.
dream. So
Never give
Pepsi
up.
Man, 4 tries. Don't give up. For me, I normally would have said, hey, I would like to see more Game Boy runs in the GDQ, and a ton got in. Shout outs to Proto. We didn't get to mention her. That's one of my favorite blocks, obviously. I love all those runs. So we should have put that on there.
Yeah, I actually regret that we didn't mention it. It's only because none of the games in particular shine to me, but the whole Game Boy
Sure.
block itself was great. I mean, I really
Yeah.
love all of those games. I love Super Mario Land. I love Ninja Gaiden Shadow. None of them specifically shout out to me like this is the highlight of SGDQ, but the Game Boy block in general was just awesome. It was so nice
I
to
think
see some of
I
those
think
games gain their attention.
for me personally, what I would have liked to see that got left out. I mean, I would have loved to see Link to the Past because I just started running it. I know it's been at like all the GDQs, and I don't blame them for not having it in this one. I'm not salty about it, but it would have been cool to see it for the first time, actually knowing everything that goes into it. Out of my runs that I submitted, I would have really liked to get Mega Man 2 Game Boy in, just because I think that game is underrated in terms of just speedrunning tech and tricks, and so that was the one I was most passionate about trying to get in. So those would probably be the two that I would mention. When
Yeah.
you read the next question there.
Sure. Jutley311 asks, have there ever been any issues between runners or people in general at GDQs that you've been to, or is everyone pretty friendly with each other? I'd say that the speedrun community in general is extremely friendly, and there's very little animosity between runners. I think that it's really easy to get an impression off of people from watching Twitch streams or seeing their Twitters or stuff like that, where people either jokingly or non-jokingly will poke fun at each other. So it's easy to think that there's at least some animosity, and I just don't think that that's the case for the
Yeah, I think if
GDQs.
anything, there's maybe issues in individual friend groups or drama just because people haven't seen each other a while or stuff like that. But in terms of, yeah, I think everybody's pretty friendly. And I think also a lot of bigger streamers that you might think, oh, well, they're going to think they're so much cooler than everyone, blah, blah, blah. I think everybody pretty much acts as each other's equal for the most part at every event I've been to. I've never talked to any streamers, big or small, where I felt like they were there's always a couple isolated things, but for the most part, everybody's just incredibly friendly and incredibly nice and wants to hear about what you've been running and what you've been playing, stuff like that. So I would definitely say it's a pretty friendly environment, especially if you're concerned like, oh, I don't know a lot of people. I think my first AGDQ, I wasn't as entrenched in the Twitch community, and I only vaguely knew about Chad and some other people. And then I made a bunch of friends there. So I think it is a very friendly and open community to welcoming new people in.
Yeah,
So
I've talked about it before. I definitely think speedrunning as a hobby fosters this sort of behavior, and it attracts people who have that same mentality. But everyone is just so encouraging of each other and legitimately wants each other to succeed. There's so little animosity, and even if you're competing directly on a game or competing directly for world record, everyone is such close friends in general, and just wants to go there and have a good time. So I think it's actually really tough to find people who are causing trouble or causing problems. Typically, if you see people who are causing problems, they're the Twitter users who don't go to the GDQs, and they're the sort of people who are just
yeah,
looking to
I
stir
could
things
see
up.
that. Yeah, and you've got great people like Blunt Bunny who will sit down with you and show you tricks for 2 days and teach you
Hey,
stuff.
shout outs to
Even
Blunt Bunny. He spent
yeah,
4
for
hours
sure.
just sitting there teaching me room for room different parts of the game that I wanted help with. I mean, you can't find a lot of communities where people are willing to take time out of their day to
Sure.
help someone else get better without something in return for them.
Also, his DKC3 race was good,
Oh
so
my
check
god,
that
how
out.
did we not mention the DKC3 race? That was
'Cause he's too
insane.
handsome. He's too handsome. That's
Oh
why
my god,
we
we're just
don't,
missing everything. I literally went
yeah.
down the schedule so I wouldn't miss anything. We've missed so much already. We can't.
Let's
It's
start. Let's just
impossible.
start over, guys. You
We're
okay with us
all right.
starting
New
over?
new podcast. All right, new podcast. We're
So
gonna get
this week
new
on the Frame
hosts,
Savers,
new
new
hosts
host.
who
That
know
would be
how
good.
to lead a podcast.
Oh man, that would be great. Oh, that'd make this podcast so much better. Um, Nick's report says at Author Blues, but I'm going to answer it as well. Do you feel that the staff of GDQ did better in terms of organizing and explaining things such as what is going on, why runs are being rejected, etc.? I kind of spoke to this a second ago. I think this GDQ, I've been to four now. I've run into. This was the best organized GDQ I have ever attended in terms of a lot of things. From the time of submitting to going there, the turnaround time on exceptions runs being accepted and rejected was very reasonable. If you messaged, you got legitimate reasons why your runs were not accepted. The schedule was posted at reasonable time. Everything just came off as being very professional, organized. For me personally, I had to sing a song as an incentive, and like I was concerned as somebody who's done music in the past, like maybe I won't be able to hear myself, maybe it's going to sound really bad. Like even that, which is not even
Yeah,
something
shout
they
outs to
is
Power
their
Up
strength.
Audio who like
Yeah,
really held that whole marathon down. They went above and beyond to make sure that everything was so well organized, that the audio was done at professional quality or above. I think that they totally
yeah. I
knocked
mean,
it out
I'm
of the
used to
park.
playing at places that have sound engineers and are, music is happening, and this is an event where they are organizing playing a video game, and they just set me up really quickly and made it sound really good. They made everything transitioned well, and they did a good job with the interviews. I have really almost no. I would say the only thing I would like is bigger font on the tags. That's the only complaint I probably have.
Wow. If that's the only thing that you can complain about,
Yeah,
that's pretty good. I
because
would
I
say
stare at someone's tag and I'm like I like if I see a name and then I'm like, oh, I'm definitely supposed to know who that person is. It's really awkward, but that's the only thing.
yeah, I wanna reiterate what John was saying. I think that obviously back when the GDQs were just 12 people showing up in Essentia's basement, I think back then it was pretty easy to get an answer for why something didn't get in, and the answer was it did get in. So be quiet. But as it went on, I think that they had a harder and harder time responding to all of the people. And now that they've set up a better system of staff and a better response network, I think that they're doing a lot better now at responding to people's questions and concerns. I think that the GDQ staff has gone out of their way to respond to the criticisms that people have had
Yeah,
about
exactly.
every time the GDQ is over, they do a response thread where they want people's feedback, and it would be so easy to just give that as an empty sounding board and just let people get their complaints out of the way. But I think that they've actually gone a long way to trying to amend some of their problems, and I think they've done a great job
Absolutely.
as far as keeping things organized on site. I don't want to bring up anything too negative. I mean, like friend of ours, Jimmy Poopins, he had an issue with getting his registration, and so he wasn't allowed in some of the practice rooms and stuff like that. So it's really easy for people on the outside to look at and say, oh well, they're being really draconian and keeping people out, and it's just no funds allowed anymore. I think that they're in a tough position. They're trying to wrangle 1,500 nerds and make it
Yeah.
all go really smoothly. Of course, you don't want to see them hardline anything like this. You want everyone to have access to it, but I think at a certain point, it's tough to figure out where to draw
There's
the line in the
slippery
sand.
slopes, and yeah, I mean, I would say I consider a couple of the GDQ staff friends, and not previous friends, but just from meeting them at GDQ staff. And I think there was some stuff at AGDQ with submissions and other things in the process that just were not good, not professional, and they listened to everything that people said. And I think honestly they did an amazing job turning all that stuff around, and providing the arcade cabinets. Like there's just all these different benefits that they keep giving that are cool. You've got to think this event blew up over a few years. It's not exactly easy to manage something that started kind of as a get together at someone's house like 4 years ago, right, to now like you're talking 1,500 people, 100 up to 150,000 people watching online. It's a big adjustment to adjust organize, and I think they did a really good job.
Yeah, it's grown
I
way
have no
faster than
complaints.
they should have been capable of keeping up with, and I think to their
Yeah,
credit, they've done an okay job
yeah.
with keeping
So
up with it.
Workster asks, do you think there is a way to fix the terrible chat that the large number of viewers on Twitch brings? I would say they did do a good adjustment of some people who they thought a lot of trolling would happen to. There were some transgender people that streamed, and the chat got the way you would expect it to, and they moved to emote only, and I think that did help a lot. I think outside of that, I don't really know what you could do unless even if they did a sub only where they gave the money to charity, um, still I don't see how you're gonna avoid the way it is. But I
Yeah, I
guess
mean, if
maybe
you've
I'm
got
not
a
creative enough.
if you've got a chat with 500,000 people in it and you turn it into sub only, you've still got probably what 10,000 people who are still going to sub, and 10,000 is still pretty much uncontrollable as it is. So it's not a
Yeah.
fix; it's just a band-aid. I think the answer is no. I think that it's a big joke for all of us, but it really is true that the best way to enjoy a GDQ stream is to hide the chat. It's just not worth it. And I think to at least some extent, the GDQ staff have responded appropriately by deciding that obviously high level moderation is still important, but for the most part, just let them do what they're going to do. People who really want to have a meaningful chat about the GDQs, there are people who host the stream, so you can go watch it when someone hosts it. There's a quick what's the IRC server, QuakeNet IRC channel that you can go to discuss it. They had a Discord server this year, so people were talking in the Discord server. They have these basically small outlets that are pretty much only people who really want to talk are going to show up to them anyway. So
Yeah.
so basically they've decided that the best way to deal with it is ignore Twitch chat because it's unmaintainable, and try to promote these other outlets for people to discuss. And I think that that's been working great for them. I don't think there's really anything you can do.
For sure. Cute little Oshawott asks, so what game would you like to see as the finale of AGDQ 2017?
So like
Clearly Wanda Gamelon.
if I
Wanda
had my
Gamelon should just close it
if
down.
I had my dream GDQ, that's so tough. There's so many great games out there. I mean, it's always going to be.
FF7 for me, a full FF7 8-hour run would it's my favorite speed run. So I would love to see that. I don't think you should have an 8-hour run, but if you're gonna have one, close. They do generally do longer RPGs, closing it down. I know they've done like Yuffie Warp, which is a like 3-hour category on PC. But I love the FF7 run, and I would like to see that. Although it's not probably pragmatically what should happen.
Yeah, it's hard for me to answer this. I think that as funny as it would be to say one of my runs should be the closer, I think in reality it should be a mainline title. I mean, the answer is always that the best closers for a GDQ are mainline titles that people appreciate, that have large outlets for donation incentives, so they can spend the week sort of promoting those donation incentives
Yeah.
to close on a high note. Get that money in so that you can see the final culmination of this donation incentive that you've been spending the whole week on. So for that purpose, I think that there's not a lot of games that fit that bill really well. I think that we've seen Super Mario RPG, if it hadn't just been done, that would have been one that I would have said, but they handled that and they did SMRPG. I think that some of the longer Mario games would make good ones, so things like Galaxy 1 and Galaxy 2 would be a pretty good fit. 3D World, something like that.
120 star maybe.
Right, some of the Zelda games would be good fits. So I know that in the past they did Ocarina of Time 100%. I think that was the closer last year. Or in a previous year. I think Majora's Mask would be another good one. I think Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess, any popular Zelda game.
Yeah.
Big
I mean, you're always going to
RPGs.
see something popular and beloved, and they should, honestly. There's no reason to end it with something a little more fringy. I think they do it correctly. I mean, I will never close it. Close at GDQ because I'm never gonna run something like that. But yeah,
Right.
it's the kind of stuff that I think could appeal to a large audience that maybe isn't even into speedrunning or the GDQs to close it out strong. And I completely agree with that. So Maction asks, GDQ events are becoming more and more well known with more public attention. Have you felt a change in tone style of the GDQ since you started viewing them?
I mean, absolutely. I started watching in AGDQ 2013. I mean, or
Mhm.
2013, 2014? No, 2014 was the first one I attended. So
Yeah, I'm not
2013 would have been
sure.
the first one I
I think the
watched.
first one I watched was AGDQ
But
2014,
whatever the
maybe, or
case, I
AGDQ
mean,
2014.
this is the lineage of the GDQs back when it was basically just a small room of friends. I mean, the first GDQ I ever watched was definitely not the Essentia's Basement GDQs. It
Yeah,
was, I think, one of the first ones they had in like the 4-H center.
sure.
And so it was still like a room full of people, but it was nowhere near these 1,500 person events that they
Yeah, I
are
think I
now.
remember it being kind of like a small conference room space with like 50 chairs and people kind of coming in and out
So the
watching the
answer
event
is
the first I saw.
absolutely, absolutely. It's had a change in tone and style, but I think that a lot of people equate a change as bad. I think so many people look at a thing they enjoy and they see it change and they say, well, I liked it before, so it's changed, so I can't like it now. And I think that that's just
Yeah,
not
that's a
true.
good point. I mean, that's kind of that mentality of you like an obscure band and then it gets big and now you don't like that band anymore because other people like it. And I don't think that's the right attitude. I think just because the event's grown bigger, it's probably a little bit more professionally done and a little more polished. But I think all of those all the growth is positive. I mean, whether or not people think of it that way, it really is for charity and it raises a ton of money for charity. I think Doctors Without Borders said it's like the biggest donation they get each year. I mean, and that's a big charity. That's a legitimate charity that most people have heard of. So it's not it's not just about like, oh, well, I want my little comfy thing. There's all kinds of events we promote throughout the year on our podcast that maybe would fit that bill a little more. This event is kind of like the Super Bowl of speedrunning. It's the big event twice a year, and it does a lot of good. So it's good that it keeps growing. That obviously presents some challenges, kind of like we were talking about with Twitch chat, other things. But certain things are out of your control. I think the events have grown in a positive way.
Yeah,
So
I think so many people. I see the attitude a lot where people are like, well, you know, they're not doing enough with speedruns. But I think what you have to appreciate is that the focus of the GDQs, and frankly, in my opinion, I think it's the correct focus, has been it's a charity event first, it's a speedrunning event second. And whether you like that or not, whether or not you approve of that or not, I think that that is the truth of the matter, and I think that's the right attitude to have. If you're going to try to earn or try to raise, $1.5 million for a charity, focus on the charity.
sure.
You can have your pure speedrun events all you want. There's plenty of them out there. There was Californiathon, there's NASA, there's Australian Speedrun Marathon going on right now, there's ESA that's coming up soon. There's plenty of pure speedrun events. If you just want to go and watch an event where they focus on, bringing attention to great runners doing great games, that's fine. And I think the GDQ achieves that while still putting their attention primarily in the right spot. They put their focus on charity.
Sure, and I think they do a great job of entertainment too. I mean, you could do a pure all the highest tech speedruns, but then you missed out on the funny moments like Pepsi Man or me singing a song or Barbie or awful games, Rocky and Bullwinkle. That stuff's not in there because it's the best tech or it's there because it's entertaining. And at the end of the day, like video games are entertainment and speedrunning them, yeah, it's a challenge and it is a competition, but it's also something we do for fun. And I think if you lose sight of that, then that's sad because I think video games should be primarily fun above anything else, and that's why we do them. So I think they've become massively entertaining, and it's to the point where I wish I could be awake for 100 hours straight so I could just watch all kinds of stuff and also hang out in the practice room and never sleep. But that's not physically
Yeah, I need
possible. But
10 copies of me, and I need all 10 copies of
oh
that to
man,
have enough Red Bull to stay up all week.
yeah, the sleep was rough. The sleep was rough. That's the one caveat. But do we have any other questions before we move on?
No, I think we're all done on questions. Thank you so much for everything that you had for us. We love answering them, and if you want to ask us more questions in the future for us to ask or to answer on future podcasts, you can message us at the Frame Savers on Twitter. You can email us at theframesavers@gmail.com, or you can just join our Discord server, which you could find an invite to at our website, which is www.theframesavers.com.
Yeah, we have a Patreon. We're trying to raise $100 a month to do a micropod kind of like this, although not as long as this. Once or every 2 weeks in between our major episodes. So they would be 20 to 30 minute long episodes to cover either subjects or games that we would not be able to dedicate a full hour and a half long episode to. Stuff like, a shorter run that maybe just we don't want to ramble about it for an hour and a half, but we'd love to plug it for 20, 30 minutes or interviews, other creative things. So we're looking to get $100 a month for that. We're at like 60 or 70, so we're real close. You can check that out at patreon.com/the frame savers. And yeah, go ahead and check out our website, theframesavers.com. It has links to everything, iTunes. We're on SoundCloud. We're on Stitcher. We're on Google Play. We're on basically anywhere you can find podcasts. So, and where can they find you, Chad?
They can find me at twitch.tv/authorblues, or you can find me on Twitter at _authorblues.
Yep, and you can find me at John Carls on both Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram, where I do some collecting, and then also my YouTube is John Carls One, where I do some of my highlights and collecting videos. So,
And
yeah, definitely.
thanks again to Retro Gaming Live TV for laying us beyond. Just want to plug them one last time. They graciously allowed us to do a live recording of our podcast on their wonderful 24/7 retro gaming centric channel. You can find their website is retrogaminglive.com, and you can find their Twitch stream at Retro Gaming Live TV. So that's twitch.tv/Retro Gaming Live TV, and I believe they are on Twitter at Retro Gaming Live TV as well. So
I think it's just Retro Gaming
Retro
Live on
Gaming
Twitter.
Live
There's
on
no
Twitter.
TV. Yeah.
Ignore me.
So definitely check them out and give them a follow. They definitely deserve that and will be tons of fun. So, anyways, thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoy the podcast, subscribe, leave us comments, and shout out to us so we can talk more. So, yep, that's about it.
All right. Well, thanks.
See ya. Bye. So that's the podcast. We're gonna go ahead and